Hi, welcome today. We're going to be talking a little bit about a condition called carpal tunnel syndrome. And carpal tunnel syndrome refers to the bones in the wrist. They're called the carpal bones. And there's a tunnel in the wrist area itself that escorts or channels the median nerve. So to start from the beginning, we have nerves that come out of the neck and they go down into the arm and they go into the hand. So carpal tunnel syndrome is in essence when somebody's median nerve, there's an anatomical nerve called a median nerve, becomes compressed, frequently in the tunnel itself. So there's a big rubber band called the flexor retinaculum that covers over the median nerve. And sometimes what happens with repetitive use, so we see this now a lot with technology as keyboard users. It used to be with meat packers and people using their forearms and their hands with repetitive motions, with powerful motions. Now it's more a question of inflammation and repetitive motion. So when this carpal tunnel becomes inflamed and the rubber band gets thick, the nerve itself that goes down into the fingers can generate symptoms. Those symptoms frequently are numbness, tingling, pain, and what we call aberrant sensations, paresthesias. So in my office, when somebody presents with carpal tunnel, especially with a failed surgical carpal tunnel, which is becoming more and more prevalent in our society, we start looking at things beyond just the carpal tunnel itself, and we're going to talk a little bit about how that could be today. So to get a little bit more anatomical, this is basically your spine. This is your pelvis down over here. Your head's up over here. It doesn't show your entire cranium. And then the neck is over here, made of 7 vertebrae. The brachial plexus are the nerves that come out in between certain bones that go down into the arm and then make up the median nerve. So there's the median, there's the ulnar, there's the radial nerve. There are different nerves that come out of the different distributions of this brachial plexus. So understand anatomically that this carpal tunnel syndrome might very well be not necessarily just the hand itself and the wrist, but it also can be an entrapment or pressure and irritation up into the elbow area itself, into the arm itself, into the base of the neck over here called the thoracic outlet syndrome, including ribs in an area that compresses the brachial nerves, and also from a neck injury itself. So when somebody comes in and somebody generates symptoms of carpal tunnel, it's incumbent to the physician to understand where the compression comes from. So nerve conduction velocity tests are often done, which is basically taking 2 points of stimulation and checking the latency, or how quickly the nerve sends the message successfully. We take it a little further beyond just that type of a critique, especially when somebody is suffering, and let's say they've actually had the surgery and now their carpal tunnel is still there. So we look at people from what we call a neuroendocrine immune perspective. We look at the neurology, which we talked about. We look at the immune, and we look at the endocrine contributions. So how does that impact on something like carpal tunnel? Well, you might very well have had a decompression surgery and still have carpal tunnel. That's pretty common. And part of it could be because your muscles in your forearm are still part of the problem where you have the compression. It could also be that you have blood sugar dysregulations, not necessarily a diabetic, although it could be a diabetic, that are also contributing. It could be that you have inflammatory problems associated with your immune function. So understand, if you're suffering with carpal tunnel, we need to get to the root of why it is. We need to do the diagnostics. And especially if you're suffering with carpal tunnel, and if it's something that hasn't resolved itself, with a progressive intervention such as a surgery, the approach that we take in the office is much more comprehensive than just looking at the source of the pain, which typically says, well, it's something in the carpals themselves. So I hope this information is helpful to you, and if you're suffering in particular with what we call failed surgical carpal tunnel, where you've had the surgery and it's still not working correctly, or even if not, this is the place to come to get the best analysis and the most complete picture of how we can resolve things, especially from a conservative perspective, not necessarily jumping in with surgery. So I look forward to our conversation. Thanks for joining me today. This is Dr. Richard Herbold.